All right, today we're going to do the paper 3 theory, which is the core option for the Coordinated Sciences. That's a double award. This is Cambridge IGCSE, the CIE examinations, and this is for May, June 2018, 0654/31. All right. Now, I'm Alicia, and I will be doing the biology and chemistry parts, and we'll be jumping back and forth with Mike, who will be doing the physics sections. Okay.
Let the festivities begin!
Question 1. Figure 1.1 shows a diagram of a section through a heart. Okay, A1. Name the part labeled X on figure 1.1. Okay, X is the structure that separates the left and the right side. It separates the ventricles and the atria. Okay, and that is called the septum. The septum is a structure that separates the two halves. 2. On figure 1.1, draw a label line and the letter V to show one of the ventricles of the heart. Okay, the ventricles are at the bottom. So this is a ventricle. And this is a ventricle as well too. But only one. It only asks to draw one. So remember, a label line in biology does not include an arrowhead. Do not put an arrowhead on, just draw a straight line. And drawing a straight line with a ruler is even better. Okay. B, name the main blood vessel that transports blood from the heart to the lungs. Okay, one of the key words here is from. Okay, from means artery. From the heart means artery. Okay, to the lungs, that means pulmonary. So the main blood vessel is called the pulmonary artery. And C, describe how the heart moves blood from the heart to the rest of the body. So in order to pump blood from the heart needs to contract, okay? And it has to go through the aorta. So the heart contracts to pump blood through the aorta to the body. And that's all they're asking for. All right. And D, the boxes on the left show the components of blood. The boxes on the right show the function of these components. Draw one line from each component of blood to its correct function. All right, so first of all, we look at the red blood cells. And what do red blood cells do? They transport hemoglobin and oxygen. The hemoglobin holds the oxygen. Okay, the white blood cells, they are involved in the immune system, so they're part of the phagocytosis and antibody formation. Platelets are essential for clotting of blood, and plasma transports the soluble nutrients, ions, and hormones. Well done. Question 2. Aluminium is a metal and oxygen is a nonmetal. A1. State 2 general physical properties of metals. Okay, so there are many physical properties of metals that you could put down. You could say malleable, ductile, shiny, or lustrous. You could say good conductors of heat or thermal energy, or good conductors of electricity or electrical energy. Okay, but it only asks for 2, and it's very important that when it asks for a specific number, you only put down that number and don't just throw answers at it. Because if you were to put down 3, unsure if one of them is correct, and you got one of them wrong, you would only get 1 mark, even if you got 2 correct. Okay? They don't want you just to throw answers at it and hope something sticks. Okay? So, one of them can be good conductors of heat or thermal energy. You can also say they're malleable. So you can hit it with a hammer and it can change shape. Okay? There's lots of things you can put down though. A2. Complete the sentences using words from the list. Each word may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Okay, so the formula of aluminium oxide, Al2O3, shows how many aluminium ions? Well, Al2O3, there are 2 aluminium ions. Okay, and how many oxide ions are there? There are Al3, O3. There are fewer somethings in an aluminium ion, Al3+, than there are in an aluminium something else. So what is there fewer of? Are there fewer protons or fewer electrons? Okay, it's Al3+, it means it has more protons, that means there's fewer electrons. Okay, and with this, than there are in an aluminium atom. Okay, an atom is just Al. And same number of protons as electrons. B. Aluminium is formed at the cathode during the electrolysis of aluminium oxide. Figure 2.1 shows this process. Oh, this is electrolysis, so you need to remember to panic. We have the positive anode, negative is cathode. Okay, positive anode, negative is cathode. So aluminium is formed at the cathode during the electrolysis of aluminum oxide. So the cathode is this one. So we have Al3+. Okay, let's see what it says. On figure 2.1, label the cathode using the letter C. Well, C. That is the cathode. You know, it's the negative part and it's the bigger bit at the end. It's not the wires going towards it. Name the element that forms at the anode. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at aluminium oxide, Al2O3. Okay, aluminum forms at the one side, at the cathode. That means oxygen, O2. Obviously, that's not balanced. But oxygen forms at the anode. Okay, all right, that's all it asks for. C, figure 2.2 shows a chemical test for the presence of nitrate ions, NO3-. So what we do, we have a test tube, we have aluminium foil inside the test tube, and we have a solution with nitrate ions and sodium hydroxide in it. And then we add red litmus paper. Now the key word there is red. You probably want a change in it. Anyway, that's just a hint. Let's see what the question asks for. In this test, nitrate ions are reduced and a gaseous compound of nitrogen is released. State the meaning of the term reduced. Okay, to be reduced is the opposite of to be oxidized. And if you're oxidized, you have gained oxygen. So, if you're reduced, you have lost oxygen. That's all it asks for. Okay. Name the compound of nitrogen that is released and describe the effect on the damp red litmus paper. Well, it's probably not going to stay red, or else you wouldn't use red litmus paper. So the effect is it will turn blue. What does that mean? That means it's alkaline. Okay? And what's being produced? That's ammonia. Okay, that's good.
Question 3. Figure 3.1 is a graph showing how the time for the world record for the 100 metre sprint has decreased since 1930. Okay. State the world record time set in 1960. Okay, so 1960, here we go. So what I'm looking at is the time over here of that result, and that's 10.25 seconds. So let's write that in. And the units are already there, so that's nice. Part 2. In 2009, Usain Bolt ran 100 metres in 9.58 seconds. Calculate his average speed in this race and state the formula that you use and show you're working. Okay, excellent. Formula? Well, we're trying to find speed. Speed equals distance over time. And working out for that, well, the distance is 100 metres and the time 9.58 seconds. That gives us a result of 10.44 metres per second. That's 10.44 metres per second. There we go. Part 3. Complete the sentence below by choosing the correct forms of energy. As an athlete runs, the something energy in the food he's eaten changes to something energy and thermal energy. Well, okay, it's talking about an athlete running. The energy in food is chemical potential energy. So we're going to just put the chemical energy. Changes to, well, they're running, so it's going to be kinetic energy, which is the energy of movement, and thermal energy. There we are. B. An athlete trains on a running machine. The running machine measures the power output. The faster that he trains, the greater his power output. Explain why the athlete's power output is greater when he runs faster. Okay, well, power is work done divided by time. As they're moving faster, the work done might remain the same, but the time it takes them to do it gets less, which means the power will increase. So the same work is done in less time. Right, next one. Figure 3.2 shows another athlete running in a long distance race. Let's jump down to see that. She pours water over herself. She is cooled by the evaporation of the water from her body. Explain, in terms of particles, how the evaporation of water cools the athletes. So let's just use our approach. Something happens which has an effect, which means, therefore. It's a 2-mark question, so it's probably overkill, but we want to obviously go into it and make sure we get the best chance of getting the marks. And it always frustrates me when people run through exams and just go, hey, that's the answer, it's obvious. Yeah, right. If it was obvious, then it'd be a more tricky question. Here we go. We get 2 marks, and they want us to discuss it in terms of particles. So let's begin at the beginning. Something happens. Well, the water absorbs heat from the athlete, and water molecules have a range of kinetic energy. As water evaporates, the molecules with more kinetic energy near the surface leave. So what that means is the kinetic energy of the molecules remaining, or the average kinetic energy of the molecules remaining, and the temperature of the water both decrease, which means the temperature of the athlete will decrease as well. There we go.
Okay, and now we're back to the biology section. Question 4. Figure 4.1 shows a diagram of a cell in a body. Name that cell. Well, this type of cell is called a sensory neuron. Okay. The cell in figure 4.1 is involved in a reflex action. Describe the pathway of a reflex arc from the initial stimulus to the response. Okay. All right. So, for a reflex action to occur, you need to have the reflex arc, and that has to start with a stimulus. So something happens that needs to be detected. Maybe you put your hand on a hot stove. So the stove is hot, your hand has to detect it. So a stimulus is detected by the sensory neuron. So a stimulus is detected by the sensory neuron, and then it has to transmit that impulse to the relay neuron, and that's in the central nervous system. So it transmits an impulse to the relay neuron in the central nervous system, and then it passes it to the motor neuron. So it passes it to the motor neuron. Once it's at the motor neuron stimulates an effector, which is a muscle or a gland, to respond. And you end up pulling your hand away. So the complete answer, a stimulus is detected by the sensory neuron. It transmits an impulse to the relay neuron in the central nervous system to the motor neuron. The motor neuron stimulates an effector, which is a muscle or a gland, to respond. So none of that involves the brain. So you do this without thinking. Okay, good. Part C, Table 4.1 shows examples of different responses by the body. Place a tick in the boxes to show all of the responses that are reflex actions. So basically, it's a reflex action if you do it without thinking, if you have to work really hard to not do it. Okay, so coughing. Yep, you have to work really hard to not cough. Running, no, you don't have to work really hard not to run. That's very easy not to run. You don't do that without thinking. Sleeping, no, you have to actually think about going to sleep. It's an effort. Sneezing, that is something you cannot control. And if you want to stop a sneeze, it takes a lot of effort. Sweating, sometimes the more you try not to sweat, the more you end up sweating. And talking, no, that takes effort. You have to think about it. So stimuli causing reflex actions can also result in the release of the hormone adrenaline. Describe the effects of the release of adrenaline on the body, which can be a very fun hormone. If you think about what happens when you have a lot of adrenaline in your body, think about what happens when you go on, say, a roller coaster, or you see a scary movie and you jump. What sort of reactions do you get? Okay, so many things happen. You can have an increase in your pulse rate, so your heart beats faster. You could have an increase in your blood glucose concentration because you have more sugar available. So if you are in a dangerous situation, you can run away very much more easily. Your pupils will dilate, so you have more light going into your eyes, so you can see better, actually. You end up sweating more. Your blood moves to your organs away from the periphery. That's why if you are very scared, your face gets pale because you want to protect your organs. You want to protect your heart and your lungs so that you can use them. But your hands and your feet, they end up getting cold if you're very nervous because the blood it's not important if your hands stay warm. Okay, but it only asks for 2 marks, so we're only going to put down 2 of these things. Okay? So one of them is the increase in your pulse rate. And another one is increase in your blood glucose concentration, how much glucose you have in your blood. Okay, so those are 2 effects that releasing adrenaline into the body will have. Question 5, A1. Complete the general equation for the reaction between an acid and an alkali. Okay, an acid plus an alkali produces salt, some particular type of salt, plus water. Okay, and name the type of chemical reaction in A1. Well, that is a neutralization reaction. Okay, it's a neutralization reaction when you produce an acid and alkali and salt and water because water is neutral. Salt and water is neutral. So dilute hydrochloric acid reacts with potassium hydroxide solution. Complete table 5.1 by writing the numbers 1, 7, and 13 to show the pH value of each liquid. So dilute hydrochloric acid, well, that's very acidic. And acidic things are closer to the bottom end of the scale, so that's a 1. Potassium hydroxide solution is very alkaline, so that's a 13. And water is neutral, so that's 7. All right. Other than water, name the compound that is produced when hydrochloric acid reacts with potassium hydroxide. So we have HCl plus KOH produces obviously H2O because that's the water part, plus a salt. So we have the Cl and the K. KCl. Okay, and that one is potassium chloride. All right, good. Describe how a student could show that the reaction between dilute hydrochloric acid and potassium hydroxide solution is exothermic. Okay, exothermic means outside temperature. It means the temperature of the surroundings gets warmer. Okay, so first of all, the student would have to use a thermometer to measure the temperature during the reaction. So I'd use a thermometer to measure the temperature during the reaction, and because this is an exothermic reaction, the temperature will rise. There we go. The temperature goes up if it's an exothermic reaction. C. A sample of air is collected near a road in a city. 6 of the gases contained in the sample are listed. We have carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, nitrogen dioxide, oxygen, and water vapor. State the gases in the list that are elements. Okay, to be an element, you can't have any other molecule in any other atom in the molecule. So it has to be nitrogen, and oxygen. Okay, you have to get both of them right to get the marks. Okay, explain why carbon dioxide is a compound and air is a mixture. So for this, compounds contain two or more types of atom chemically bonded. So carbon dioxide has one carbon and two oxygens. So compounds contain two or more types of atom that are chemically bonded. So carbon dioxide has one carbon and two oxygens. Air, on the other hand, as we've seen up above, is a mixture of many different types of substances. Some of them are compounds, some of them are elements, and they're not chemically bonded together. Okay, so mixtures contain two or more substances not chemically bonded together. All right, let's move on. Part 3. State 2 gases in the list that cause air pollution. Okay, so let's look back up at that list. Okay, we have carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, nitrogen dioxide, water, and water vapor. So carbon monoxide definitely causes pollution, air pollution. And so does nitrogen dioxide. That causes some acid rain. Okay, let's write that down. Okay, 2 gases that cause air pollution, carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide. Okay, state 2 gases in the list that cause the rusting of iron. Well, so that will be oxygen. And it's a gas, so it has to be water vapor. Because you need oxygen and you need water to cause rusting. And let's just double check. We have oxygen and we have water vapor. So they are in the list. So that is the answer to part 4. Okay, now we move on to the physics.
Figure 6.1 shows the forces acting on a police car when it's travelling at a constant speed. 4 forces are shown, A, B, C, and D. State which force is the weight of the police car. Well, it's this one, isn't it? It's C. There we go. It's pointing down, obviously, towards the centre of the Earth. Compare the size and direction of forces B and D when the car is accelerating in the forwards direction. So it means it's accelerating this way. So force B would have to be bigger than force D. So it would be accelerating in the direction of B. And the resultant force will be in the same direction as B. There we go. 3. Forces can change the motion of an object. State one other effect that a force can have on an object. That can change the shape. Same as if you got a ball and you squeeze it, or if you get a spring and you extend it, or compress it. Name the unit of force. Part 4, well that is in Newton. B. The police car uses a loud siren to alert people. State how the loudness of the siren, or the loudness of the sound of the siren changes when the amplitude of the sound wave emitted increases. Well, as the amplitude increases, what happens is the sound volume increases, so the loudness will also increase. So as the amplitude increases, the loudness increases. And the amplitude represents how much those little particles are moving from their equilibrium position. So how much energy is being put into moving whatever they touch. In this case, your eardrum. 2. State how the pitch of the sound of the siren changes when the frequency of the waves is reduced. Well, as frequency decreases, the pitch decreases. Part C. Cars have rear view mirrors to help the drivers see behind the car. A driver sees a taxi in his mirror, as shown in figure 6.2. Describe 2 characteristics of an image seen in the mirror apart from the size. Right, well straight away we can see it's the right way up, isn't it? It's the right direction, so it's upright. And we've made it quite clear for us here that what's happened is the left and right side have changed sides. So taxi, which should normally be written that way round, has become exact. So that means the left and right are reversed, and we would call that laterally inverted. There we go. Part D. The bodywork of a car is usually made from steel. The bodywork of some cars is made from aluminium. Suggest a simple way of deciding whether the bodywork is made from steel or aluminium. Well, okay. Pretty straightforward one, this one. Because steel attracts magnets. Aluminium does not. So place a magnet next to it. Or on it. On the car. If it attracts, it's steel. If not, it's aluminium. And E, the car rolls down a hill with the engine switched off. State the energy transformation that is taking place. Okay, if it's coming down a hill, what we start off with at the top of the hill. There we go, start off with our awesome little car, there we go. Not sure anyone would buy that car, but fair enough. It has at the top gravitational potential energy. As it gets faster and faster going down, that becomes kinetic energy. So we start with gravitational potential energy, which is energy due to its height, and that changes to kinetic energy. Oops. Let's look at that question one more time, nice and carefully. Whereas I'd probably still get the mark for it. Energy is already written in the answer, so I'm just going to take that, score that out and call that gravitational potential. Even though I'd get the mark anyway, I just want to be clear.
Welcome back for more of the biology. We have question 7a. Alleles are different forms of genes. Complete the sentences about genes using the word from the list. Each word may be used once, more than once, or not at all. We have alleles, carbohydrates, cells, chromosomes, DNA, nuclei, and proteins. Okay, so genes are found on chromosomes. In the nuclei of the cells. They're part of the chromosome. You have different types of genes, which those are called alleles. They're found as part of the DNA, and the DNA is in the nucleus, but they're actually on the chromosomes. So a gene is a length of DNA. That is the unit of heredity and codes for a specific protein. So every gene codes for a protein. A gene can be copied and passed on to the next generation. Part B. Diagram A in figure 7.1 shows a person with an attached earlobe. So the earlobe is attached at the bottom here. Diagram B in figure 7.1 shows a different person with an unattached earlobe. So that is a wobbly earlobe. If your earlobe wobbles, it's unattached. The allele for attached earlobes is a small e because it's recessive, and the allele for unattached earlobes is a large E because it's dominant. One allele is inherited from the mother and one from the father. Yes. State all the possible genotypes for the person in diagram B in figure 7.1. So remember, B has the unattached unattached earlobe. And if it's unattached, it is dominant. So if it's dominant, it can be both alleles can be dominant, or one can be dominant, one can be recessive, because you only need one to be there for it to show the characteristic, for it to be expressed. Name the terms used to describe the genotype of the person in diagram A, figure 7.1. Okay, so A has to be small e's, small e. It's recessive, so you need both of them to be expressed. So that means it's homozygous, recessive. Good. C. In a population, there are more people with unattached earlobes than attached earlobes. Explain why there are more people with unattached earlobes. All right, so the dominant allele is always expressed. And because it's always expressed, the unattached earlobes can have either homozygous or heterozygous genotypes. All right, so the dominant allele is always expressed, so unattached earlobes can have capital E or capital E small e. Okay, now the recessive allele for the attached earlobe is only expressed if both alleles are recessive, so small e, small e. So the complete answer, the dominant allele is always expressed, so unattached earlobes can have capital E or capital E small e, and the recessive allele, the attached earlobe, is only expressed if both alleles are recessive, small e, small e. There we go. Let's move on to the chemistry. Question 8. Figure 8.1 shows apparatus used by a student to investigate the reaction between excess dilute hydrochloric acid and a piece of limestone. So A, name the chemical compound in limestone that reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid to release carbon dioxide. Okay, that is known as calcium carbonate. So it has calcium and it has a CO3, which is a carbonate, which produces carbon dioxide. B, the student measures the volume of carbon dioxide in a measuring cylinder every minute for 7 minutes. Her results are shown in figure 8.2. All right, so we have the time on the x-axis in minutes, and we have the volume of carbon dioxide produced on the y-axis. It looks like the volume keeps increasing steadily until it starts to reach a maximum and it slows down and then it can't produce any more. All right, let's look at the rest of the question. 1. Use figure 8.2 to define the volume of carbon dioxide released. Okay, so we look at this. We look, the maximum volume released is here, and that is 45 centimeters cubed. And it already has centimeters cubed in the answer, so you just need to write down 45. All right. B2. The student repeats the reaction and state one change she can make so that a greater volume of carbon dioxide is released. Okay, she wants to produce more carbon dioxide, so she needs to have more of the stuff that produces the carbon dioxide. So that is use more limestone. Because remember, limestone is calcium carbonate, and the carbonate produces carbon dioxide. Okay, part 3. State 2 changes the student can make to increase the rate of reaction. Okay, so there's a few things that can be done. She can either increase the surface area of the limestone, she can powder it, she can increase the temperature of the acid, or she can increase the concentration of the acid. But you should only write down 2 answers. Okay, so I wrote down you can increase the surface area of the limestone, you can make it powdered, or you can increase the temperature of the acid. It doesn't matter which of the 3 you write down. All right, part C. A white solid and a gas are produced when limestone is heated. Name the white solid and the gas. Okay, so limestone is heated. So what it actually produces is calcium oxide. And this is also known as lime. And the gas is carbon dioxide. All right, good. And finally, for this question, explain why limestone is spread onto soil that is used for growing crops. Well, plants don't grow very well if the soil is very acidic, so you need to neutralize it. So the limestone neutralizes the acid in the soil so that plants can grow. All right, now move on to the physics.
Question 9. Figure 9.1 shows a heater in a classroom. The heater is filled with hot water. Name the method by which thermal energy passes through the metal casing of the heater. Well, that's conduction. Conduction happens when things are in contact. The air around the heater is warmed. Draw 3 arrows to show how the warmed air circulates around the classroom. One has been drawn for you. Okay. So the air comes up here, it then comes over the ceiling, comes down the other side as it cools down, and comes back here. And that's a big convection current that's occurring in the room. Convection, of course, happens when the density of an object changes, the density of gas changes or liquid changes, and it lifts up compared to its surroundings, which remain at the same density. Ah, there we go. Name the method of thermal transfer. That would be convection. In school, a bell is rung to indicate that a lesson has ended. The bell produces sound waves that travel through the air. State why sound waves can travel through the air but cannot travel through outer space. Well, sound needs a medium to travel in. It's a series of compressions and rarefactions as particles bounce into each other, but it needs a medium to travel in. A good way to discuss it, if you like, is the idea that sound needs regions of high pressure and low pressure. But if you're in space, there's nothing there. So a region of high pressure is just nothing. A region of low pressure is nothing. There is nothing there with which to transfer the energy. Part 2. A sound wave is an example of a longitudinal wave. State one example of a transverse wave. Well, visible light's one example. X-rays, that's another example. Microwaves. Any EM wave is a safe bet here. C. In the school laboratory, a teacher uses a radioactive isotope of americium. State the meaning of the term isotope. Alright, so for an isotope, what we're dealing with is atoms which have the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So atoms with the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. 2. Americium-241 decays by emitting alpha particles. Describe the nature of alpha particles. Alright. Alpha particles are helium nuclei. They're made up of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, and because of that they have a positive charge. There we are. So helium nuclei made of 2 protons and 2 neutrons and are positively charged.
Okay, welcome back to the biology for question 10. Figure 10.1 shows the activity of some digestive enzymes at different pH values. Okay, so we have 3 different enzymes, A, B, and C. So we need to use figure 10.1 to state the optimum pH of enzyme B. Okay, so enzyme B works best when it is right here. So if we move that down, that is pH 7. It is pH 7. And remember, when you write pH, it's always a little p and a capital H, no matter how much you think that looks silly. The H is for hydrogens. Okay, it's very important you do that. Next question. Use figure 10.1 to state a pH at which enzyme C does not work. It says a pH, it can be any pH, just choose one. All right. Okay, so enzyme C works between pH 6 and pH 12. So if you choose any other number that's not between 6 and 12, then that will be the correct answer. I'm going to choose pH 4. Why not? It can be any of them. pH 4. Could be pH 1 or 2 or 3.6. Doesn't matter, but as long as it's not between 6 and 12. Good. Enzyme A is the enzyme protease. Okay, protease breaks down proteins. Okay, state where protease is secreted in the alimentary canal. Okay, proteases are actually secreted in different areas. Okay, it is actually secreted in the stomach and in the small intestine and in the pancreas. You can use any one of those. You don't have to write down all 3. Okay, name the products made by the action of protease. Okay, protease breaks down proteins, and when you break down proteins, they become amino acids. All right, there we go. And let's move on to part C. Okay, part C, 1. Describe the function of enzymes in chemical digestion. An enzyme is a biological catalyst that break large, insoluble food molecules into smaller, soluble molecules. Okay, so enzymes are biological catalysts that break large, insoluble food molecules into smaller, soluble molecules. Okay, that's an important definition you definitely have to know, because I've seen it many times. Okay, and part 3. Apart from chemical digestion, state and describe one other action in the alimentary canal that aids digestion. Okay, so there's a few different types of mechanical digestions, but one of them, a very simple one, is the teeth. The teeth mechanically break food into smaller pieces to increase the surface area. So teeth mechanically break food into smaller pieces to increase surface area. And the increased surface area means that the enzymes and other digestive processes can react more effectively. All right, and now let's go to the chemistry. Question 11. The chemical symbols of a chlorine atom and a bromine atom are shown below. The symbols include the atomic number and mass number of each atom. So the atomic number, also known as the proton number, is a small one, and the mass number contains the mass, the full amount, which is the large one. The full amount of the nucleus, so protons and neutrons put together. Okay, so state the number of neutrons in the bromine atom. Okay, so the mass number is protons plus neutrons. The atomic number is just the protons. So we have 79 proton plus neutrons minus 35 protons equals 44 neutrons. All right? And state the number of electrons in the chlorine atom. It's an atom, it's not an ion, so it has the same number of electrons that does protons. So that means it has 17. Okay? And state the number of the group in the periodic table that contains chlorine and bromine. Okay, so if we look over at the periodic table, so chlorine is over here and bromine is over here. They're in this group here. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is in group 7. Group 7. All right. B1. State the color produced when chlorine reacts with colorless sodium bromide solution. Okay, so the color that's produced is orange. Okay, it's an orange color produced in that reaction. Okay, and explain your answer to B1 using ideas about reactivity. Okay, so you have to remember in this reaction, so we have our Cl2 plus 2NaBr produces Br2 plus 2NaCl. Now the bromine, that's orange. And the reason why bromine, and sodium chloride as we know is colorless, as we know with bromine, the reason why that's produced is because it is less reactive than chlorine. Because chlorine really wants to react with the sodium. It kicks out the bromine, which isn't as strong. Okay, so we start off, we say chlorine is more reactive than bromine, so bromine is displaced. Okay, chlorine is more reactive than bromine, so bromine is displaced. You do not need to include this reaction in your answer. Okay, it's just which one's more reactive and which one is displaced. That's what they want to know. Okay. Part C. Hydrocarbon Y is mixed with bromine solution. State the meaning of the term hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon is a molecule that contains only carbon and hydrogen. Okay, so a molecule that contains only hydrogen and carbon. Part 2. No color change is observed when hydrocarbon Y is mixed with bromine solution. State what this shows about hydrocarbon Y. Okay, what this shows is that there are no double bonds. It shows that there are no double bonds. It's saturated. It has all the hydrogens it can have, which means that there's no spots for the bromine to break the double bonds and to add across them. When the bromine, if the bromine is added to the double bonds, then the orange color will slowly disappear. Okay. D. Describe what happens when ethene molecules react to form polyethene. Okay, so polyethene is a polymer. So to make a polymer, you need double bonds from ethene need to be broken so that large chains of ethene basically can be formed. So the double bonds of ethene break so long chains can be formed. Let's keep going.
Question 12. The frame of a bicycle can be painted using electrostatic paint spraying. In electrostatic paint spraying, the surfaces being painted are given a negative charge, and the paint droplets leaving the spray gun are given a positive charge. And here we've got a little picture of it being utilised. Explain why the positive charges on the paint droplet and the negative charges on the frame make sure that the paint droplets are attracted to the frame. Well, because positive and negative charges attract. Part 2. Explain why the positive charges on the paint droplets make sure that the paint droplets spread evenly over the frame. Okay, well the paint droplets are going to spread evenly because they're going to separate, because positive and positive repel. So the paint droplets will be repelled from each other. You could just say like charges repel. That's absolutely fine. That'll spread them out. B. The air in a tyre of a bicycle warms up during a journey. Describes what happens to the molecules in the air as the tyre warms up. Well, they move faster. They move faster as the temperature increases. 2. Describe how molecules in the air in the tyre exert a pressure on the walls of the tyre. Well, the molecules of the air collide with the tyre wall. And that's where the pressure comes from. Part C. The bicycle is left outside on a sunny day. Energy from the sun heats the bicycle. State the method of energy transfer between the sun and the earth. Well, at that point it's radiation. The energy is radiated out. 2. Name the part of the electromagnetic spectrum involved in thermal energy transfer from the sun to the earth and place it in the correct position in the incomplete electromagnetic spectrum. Alright. Oh, it doesn't want us to fill it in. A lot of the times they just give us these empty tables and we have to fill them in. So if you hadn't read through the question carefully, you might start filling these in completely. So we get gamma rays up to the left, radio waves up to the right. This is infrared radiation. Oh. Infrared radiation. There we go. That's it labelled and it's in the diagram now. Doesn't want us to complete anything else. Part D, figure 12.3 shows a bicycle with front lamp A and rear lamp B powered by the same cells. Figure 12.4 shows a circuit arrangement. So we get two batteries and lamp A and lamp B. Using the correct circuit symbols, draw a circuit diagram of this arrangement. Right. Positives to the right, negative to the left. Okay, negatives given by the little symbol like that. There we are. We get two lamps in a row. My power supply. Lamp number 1. Lamp number 2. So they're in series. Not the world's straightest line, but that's perfect. There we go, good enough to get the marks. Obviously, a key point whenever you're doing these particular things, make sure that all these bits here are actually joined on. You haven't got any little gaps in there, and that's important. If you've got gaps in there, you'll lose marks. Lamps A and B are identical. The current in each lamp is 0.4 amps, and the total voltage supplied by the cells is 3 volts. Complete the resistance of lamp A. Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, we know that V equals IR. And we're just going to find the total resistance first. Alright. So the total resistance is then given by voltage divided by current, which is 3 volts divided by 0.4 amps, which gives me 7.5 ohms. There we go. It wanted me to put the working down there, but I should still get the marks for it without any problems. Alright. So 7.5 ohms. Now that's for RT. But that's two resistances added together. One for each of the lamps, and they're identical. So know that 2 times the resistance of each individual lamp is 7.5 ohms. So that means that the resistance of one lamp is 3.75 ohms. It's 1/2 that value. So there we go, resistance 3.75. Excellent.
And we're back for question 13, which is the final question on this paper, and it's a biology question. So figure 13.1 shows a plant responding to a stimulus. Name the response shown by the plant in figure 13.1. Now that is known as phototropism. Photo meaning light, and tropism is basically movement towards it. Describe the advantage to the plant of the response shown in figure 13.1. Basically, what's the advantage of phototropism? Okay, well, phototropism is very useful to the plant because the plant can turn its leaves towards the sun so that it can get the maximum amount of photosynthesis that's possible. So the plant can turn its leaves towards the sun so it can do maximum photosynthesis. Part B. The plant in figure 13.1 has roots that are used for the uptake of water. Describe how water is moved from the soil to the plant. Okay, so water goes from the soil to the plant by diffusion. It goes from a high water concentration to a low water concentration. And it goes through the root hair cells. Okay, so water moves by diffusion, that's important, from high water concentration to low water concentration through the root hair cells. Now you have to say water concentration. You can't just say concentration, because when you're saying concentration, you're generally talking about the stuff in the water, not the water itself. So it's very important you say water concentration for this. Okay? And finally, the roots also take in mineral ions. State the mineral ion that is required for the production of chlorophyll. And that mineral ion is magnesium. There we go. And that is the end of the paper. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful. If you did find it useful, I would really appreciate if you were to like and subscribe. And if you have any other questions or comments, please write them in the comments down below. So I hope this worked out well for you, and have a wonderful day.